Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into something really fascinating and honestly incredibly urgent. We are talking about the hidden, invisible problems that surround us every single day, and more importantly, the powerful grassroots solutions fighting back. We're going to connect some dots that might seem completely unrelated at first, just to uncover how both nature and human societies are stepping up to face these massive challenges.
So, think about this for a second. What do the surface of the ocean and a small rural village actually have in common? On the surface, yeah, no pun intended, you'd probably say absolutely nothing, right? But as we'll uncover in our explainer today, both of these environments are essentially ground zero for some massive, invisible crises. They represent converging storylines that show us how hidden threats are messing with the health of our global ecosystems and really how we can actually fight back.
That brings us to Section 1, Unseen Crises Surrounding Us.
Let's kick things off with our oceans. Climate strategist Rob Dillette highlights a number that is just absolutely staggering: 12 million tons. That is the amount of plastic entering our world's oceans every single year. To put that into perspective, it's the equivalent of a full garbage truck backing up and dumping its entire load straight into the sea every single minute of every day. And remember, that is just what's being added on top of the plastic that's already been accumulating out there for decades.
But here's the thing. The true crisis isn't just that visible trash washing up on our beaches. It's the stuff you can't easily see. That plastic breaks down into tiny, microscopic fragments we call microplastics. And they're not just staying in the water anymore. These invisible particles have spread like wildfire to the most remote, surprising places on the planet. We're finding them frozen in Arctic ice, floating way up in the clouds, and, unbelievably, even in the air we are breathing right now. It is a completely global, completely infiltration.
Now, while the ocean is dealing with physical microplastics, human communities are actually suffering from a different kind of invisible fragmentation. It's a silent disconnect. Across rural towns in Europe, there's this massive issue with low civic participation and severely limited access to European Union programs. Citizens in these rural areas are essentially isolated. They're cut off from the very democratic processes that govern them, which makes their voices and their needs essentially invisible to the policymakers who are in charge.
Let's move to Section 2, Disrupting Ecosystems and the Silent Damage It Causes.
Jumping back to the ocean, you really have to zoom in to a microscopic level to see the true damage. This is all happening in something called the sea surface microlayer. It's an incredibly thin but absolutely critical biological layer resting right on top of the ocean water. It's basically the exact spot where vulnerable fish larvae live, where vital oxygen is swapped with the atmosphere, and where seawater evaporation is regulated. But those microplastics, they get trapped right in this specific layer. They pollute it with heavy metals, they mess with the natural surface tension of the water, and they completely disrupt the microorganisms that form the very base of the marine food chain. And you know, when you disrupt the base of the chain, absolutely everybody suffers, from the tiniest fish all the way up to us.
In a really similar way, when rural communities become isolated, the human ecosystem breaks down. But this is exactly where the solutions are starting to pop up. Let me introduce you to Rural Connect. This is an incredible European project uniting rural towns across 5 countries: Spain, Italy, Romania, Ireland, and Luxembourg. Their whole mission is to repair this disrupted human ecosystem. They're tackling that low civic participation by actively empowering citizens, especially women, youth, and local entrepreneurs. The goal is to help them reconnect and really amplify their voices within EU democracy.
Section 3, Adapting to the Challenge.
So first, we really need to understand why adopting to this is so wildly urgent. On a global scale, we have to face a pretty uncomfortable truth. Only about 25% of plastics are actually recycled or burnt. That means the remaining 75%, it just ends up sitting in landfills or, you guessed it, choking our oceans. Because our current ways of preventing this are falling so incredibly short. Radical adaptation isn't just some nice-to-have option anymore. It is literally an absolute necessity for survival.
But amazingly, adaptation is happening on both fronts at the very same time. In the ocean, scientists have actually identified dozens of microorganisms that are developing plastic-degrading capabilities. Just think about that for a second. Microbial species are literally evolving to digest plastic. It's early days, sure, but nature is fighting back. And over in our towns, just like those microbes learning to digest complex plastics, Rural Connect is actively training everyday citizens to digest and navigate incredibly complex political systems. They're taking isolated individuals and turning them into active, empowered participants in democracy.
Which brings us to Section 4, Local Action, Massive Impact.
Now, of course, biological and social adaptation takes time, but there are absolutely things we can do right now. Take Morocco, for example. About a decade ago, the entire country was dealing with severe plastic pollution. But they didn't just sit around waiting for a miracle. They took decisive, incredibly bold local action. They instituted a 100% ban. They completely outlawed the production, import, export, sales, and distribution of all plastic bags. Fast forward to the present day, and the results are visually stunning. The streets, the markets, the beaches, they are noticeably cleaner. It's definitive, undeniable proof that when local policy is implemented decisively, it works, and it works fast.
And we're seeing that exact same targeted local action working for civic engagement too. Rural Connect uses a very structured, localized approach to combat that invisible disconnect we were talking about earlier. It's really a three-step process. Step 1, they build strong cooperation networks between diverse rural towns. Step 2, they offer digital and leadership training so citizens actually have the modern tools they need to get involved. And Step 3, they create dedicated spaces for these citizens to share their voices and their ideas directly with actual policymakers. This grassroots approach is actively building more inclusive, resilient, and connected communities.
Section 5. Political will is the ultimate driver.
Climate strategist Rob Delat puts it pretty bluntly. He says we could solve it in a decade if we had the political will. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is this. Whether we are talking about microscopic plastics destroying the biological foundation of our oceans or invisible barriers destroying democratic participation in rural Europe, the underlying solution is exactly the same. We have to push, and we have to push hard. Environmental and civic problems alike require relentless public engagement. We need citizens who are empowered to push industries and push politicians to actually prioritize these issues.
Which leaves us with the most important question of all. How will you apply political will to the invisible problems in your own backyard? Whether that means organizing a group to tackle plastic waste in your local environment or simply helping an isolated neighbor find their voice and step into local politics, the power to change these unseen crises always starts locally. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it sparks some curiosity, and I challenge you to look just a little closer at the invisible ecosystems all around you.